Greetings, everyone. A very good afternoon to you all. For those of you who are in our neck of the woods, otherwise good morning and good evening, perhaps. I'm Yasmin Batliwala, the Chief Executive of Advocates for International Development, or A4ID. And I'm really delighted to welcome you to the final session this year in A4ID's webinar series, Justice Through Partnership, Unlocking Legal Support for Development Impact. Today's theme, Bridging the Gap, Legal Expertise for Lasting Social Change in South Asia, goes right to the heart of A4ID's mission, which is using the power of the law and the skills of legal community to create a more just, equitable, and sustainable world. When we speak of bridging the gap, we are referring to more than simply providing legal advice. We're talking about a deeper, more holistic approach, one that builds trust, shares knowledge, and strengthens institutions. Bridging the gap means equipping communities with the tools to demand accountability and ensuring that civil society has the space and the strength to flourish. In South Asia, where traditions of community action, advocacy, and collective responsibility run deep, these partnerships have the power to unlock transformative change. When we combine the expertise of lawyers with the lived experiences of those in the front lines, from rural women's cooperatives to youth climate activists, we turn the law into a living, breathing instrument of justice. But we must be clear, this work cannot be done in isolation. The challenges that we're facing today are complex, interwoven, and global in their impact. That is why today's conversation is so vital. Today, we have an opportunity to explore practical strategies for embedding legal expertise into the heart of sustainable development, so that justice is not just an afterthought, but a foundation for every effort to improve lives. Here, more than almost anywhere else, the gap between the law as it's written and the law as it's lived can determine whether communities thrive or are left behind. This is why today's conversation is so urgent. Bridging this gap is not simply a matter of technical reform. It's about ensuring that the law serves the people, and I mean all people, and that it becomes a tool for empowerment rather than exclusion. It's about equipping civil society, governments, and businesses to work together to dismantle barriers, to keep women, children, minorities, and those living in poverty from accessing justice and opportunity. At A4ID, we believe that lawyers and legal professionals have a unique and powerful role to play in this transformation. Their expertise can turn lofty principles into enforceable rights, can strengthen legal frameworks that protect the most vulnerable, and can empower grassroots organization with the knowledge and with the tools they need to hold power to account. The law is, after all, not static. It is a living instrument that shapes the lives of individuals and communities every single day. But law on its own is not enough. We know that lasting change only comes when legal expertise is combined with partnership, with collaboration that crosses borders and disciplines. And this is why A4ID exists. We bring together law firms, barristers, in-house counsels, academics, NGOs, governments, and international bodies to work side by side. Together, we have supported legal policy reforms that improve access to justice, shaped regulatory frameworks that promote responsible business, and built the capacity of lawyers and judges to respond to emerging challenges, from climate justice to human rights abuses, from corruption to modern slavery. So today we will explore together how we can deepen this impact. We will ask, how do we ensure that legal expertise is accessible to those who need it most? How do we design partnerships that do not simply deliver short-term fixes, but transform systems in the longer term? And how do we harness innovation and cross-border collaboration to overcome entrenched challenges and accelerate progress forward towards the Sustainable Development Goals? This is not just a technical conversation, it's a moral one, and the stakes could not be higher. If we succeed in bridging this gap, we'll not just strengthen laws, we'll strengthen trust in justice, expand freedoms, and enable entire communities to flourish. We'll contribute to building societies where the rule of law is not just a privilege for a few, but a guarantee for everyone. So as we begin, I encourage each of you to think boldly, to share your experiences openly, and to look for opportunities where your own expertise and your own networks can add value. Together, let us use this session not just to discuss the gap, but to bridge the gap, a bridge that is strong enough to carry the weight of our shared vision for justice, equity, and lasting social change. Now, I'm delighted to say that we have an amazing panel who are going to discuss some of these challenges and delve into some of the complexities of bridging the gap. And so I'm delighted to introduce the moderator for this session, Govind Manoharan, who is an advocate practice in the Supreme Court of India, and also who I met when at LAWASIA earlier in the year, because he serves on the LAWASIA Human Rights Committee, where his focus has been on the intersection of business and human rights. Welcome, Govind, and over to you.
Thank you, Yasmin, for those powerful opening comments and for the kind introduction. Greetings, everyone. Welcome, panelists and all the attendees to the third and final webinar in the series hosted by A4ID. I'm thrilled to be moderating this session, and I thank A4ID for having this conversation or hosting this conversation at a pivotal moment where rapid geopolitical shifts, technological advances, and social movements are reshaping our societies in very profound ways. Even though South Asia is diverse and our concerns may seem complex and individualistic, we know from our own histories and our experiences that we've been able to find commonalities and forge collaborations to address issues, not only in the spirit of solidarity, but also, like Yasmin mentioned, with a view to realize the transformative potential of our own societies. And I'm a lawyer, so I believe that the legal community stands at the heart of this transformation, not only as an enforcer of rules, but also as a guardian of human dignity and human rights, a facilitator of justice, and also a catalyst for change. Now, I've seen this personally in my public law work at the Supreme Court, where we've been able to lend our assistance to causes such as marriage equality, surveillance, and impunity by armed forces, etc. But quite apart from that, at LAWASIA that Yasmin mentioned, which is a regional bar association in South Asia, which we've been around for about 6 decades. This is the kind of work that we do, where we, quite apart from our advocacy statements and knowledge building, we'd like to forge partnerships with organizations like A4ID and the folks. We learn from each other, so that we're able to exchange notes of mutual benefit and aid to collaborate in the region. May I also use this opportunity to share a link in the chat box That way, you'll also have a look at the chat box where your questions should come in. A link to the LAWASIA's manual on the international right to remedy. Now, this is a dynamic document which we hope will evolve over time. It's a practical and clear guide to the landscape of right to remedy under international law. It's a freely available document. We hope it's useful for practitioners and non-practitioners alike. I've put it on the chat. I hope somebody can put it on the larger chat. With that small plug, I'd like to get to the business at hand. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from an esteemed panel of experts who bring diverse perspectives on these challenges and opportunities that's facing South Asia today, be it upholding human rights, expanding access to justice, fostering partnerships, embracing technology, and standing up for constitutional values in times of crisis. We hope to have a Q&A session for about 15 minutes towards the end. I encourage all of you to engage deeply with this conversation. My co-panelists and I have chosen the format of a conversation for this session. So I have some questions for the panelists, and I hope they traverse some form of common themes. So the first thing I want to get to is to understand from the perspective of our panelists, what are the key opportunities and challenges facing and shaping South Asia today? So with that, I want to bring in our first speaker, Mr. Vishavjeet Chaudhary. Vish Chaudhary is a lawyer by training. He's also project lead for A4ID and is based out of New Delhi. Vish, great to have you here. So the question I have for you is, just to start things off, from your perspective, what do you believe are the biggest challenges and opportunities facing South Asia today?
Thanks very much, Govind, for the very warm welcome and for the introduction. And I think what you ask is a very pertinent and a very important question, because I think that's something that has to be the foundation of how we work, how we deal with things, and how we come up with solutions. So I'll just briefly mention, because a lot of it has already been said in Yasmin's address and what you introduced. I think you've already talked about the pivotal shift that's happening in terms of the politics. So I won't go into that. I will be talking about a little about the other challenges that I think we are facing. And I think the first one has to be the dynamic and the very quick shift in the political setups and the political systems, etc., that's happening across South Asia. And that's definitely one of the challenges, because I think it's a very fast developing story, and it continues to do so. The second, I would say, from our perspective, is probably the inequality that we see. And this inequality is in terms of regions, it's in terms of countries, it's in terms of where you are, how you're placed, so on and so forth, which really is a big challenge, especially in this part of the world, because the inequality, as I think we all agree, runs in a very intersectional manner, which is a big challenge. With that also comes access to justice. And as you were rightly saying about the remedies, even if the remedies might exist, the ability or indeed the inability to access those remedies is a big challenge. And I think there are different kinds of statistics, and none of them are positive. All of them show a very bleak picture of how hard it is to have access to those remedies, access to justice, and integrated solutions there. And I think the first one, which of course is very timely, and I think if anything we might be even a bit late, is these are challenges that are impacting the world, which is climate change. We've only got about 5 years, and as we often say, it's not it's just probably our last chance to be able to reverse that, or at least to mitigate that. So climate change is a big challenge, and particularly for South Asia, not just because of the vulnerable populations here, but also the disproportionate impact that it will have, including on food security and livelihoods of people. So these are some of the big challenges. And of course, there are others which inequality would cover, for instance, gender justice, so on and so forth. But it's not all a bleak picture, because there have been some some very encouraging opportunities that have emerged. And I think the first, by sheer volume, if nothing else, although there's a lot more to it, but by sheer volume has to be the fact that more than 25% of the population of the world lives in this part of the world. That's a huge opportunity, each individual representing one kind of opportunity. And I think that is a huge, huge opportunity in order to make impact. The second opportunity is also the way in which economic activities have become sort of concentrated in this part of the world. For instance, with Bangladesh and India, the manufacturing hubs for textiles and other, very, very crucial activities, service industry, etc. Those offer a lot of opportunity, especially when we look at things and aspects like responsible business, as well as other related areas. The third is that, as Yasmin said, I think this area or this part of the world has a very rich and a very textured, nuanced history of collaborations. It's got a very, again, rich history of thriving democracies, of where all the stakeholders, they have the opportunity and the privilege to come together and to work towards a better goal, which I think is the biggest opportunity that I can think of, because it really goes to the heart of the mindset and how the countries and the regions are sort of functioning. So I would say, despite the challenges, and a lot of them certainly are there, it would be very unwise to not acknowledge them. Having said which, the opportunities are really massive, and they truly are representative of the massive and the long impact and the sustainability that can be brought into the region. So the opportunities galore. And I think they're also in some way proportional to some of the challenges that we have. And that is what our opinion is. Thanks. Back to you, Govind.
Thanks, Vish. I think you've neatly laid out, I think, the massive challenges, like you say. But I think opportunities are always there, especially in this region. But thanks for those comments. I want to move quickly to our next speaker, Ms. Lakshmi Bhatia. Lakshmi comes with decades of experience in the development sector. She was Global Director, Strategy and Partnerships at Gap Incorporated, and she is a visiting faculty at the India Institute of Management, both in the Bodh Gaya and Jammu campuses. She has been working in the space of business and human rights since nearly 3 decades, with a focus on fair trade and equitable development. She also founded the Women in Value Chains Network in 2017, which brings together various civil society and multilateral organizations that come together to look at issues facing women workers, particularly in the informal parts of the global value chains. Lakshmi, it's great to have you here. Given your vast experience, I want to throw this at you, and you've seen many, many transitions, both geopolitical and otherwise. So I want to ask you, in this rapidly shifting geopolitical environment impacting socioeconomic systems, what are the challenges legal systems encounter in upholding human dignity and human rights?
Thank you so much, Govind and A4ID, for this opportunity. I think this is probably my year 3 being back at this event, and I look forward to it every year. See, Govind, I believe that every generation is given its own big crisis. There are always many crises, but there'll always be like a big crisis. If you look at the world wars, or if you look at, other pandemics. So I believe, this combination of climate change and technology has brought about the big challenge that's come into our generational space. And so the whole question is, how do you deal with something that is so big? I believe that crisis precedes transformation. So whenever we hit a tipping point in terms of civilizational evolution, there will be some kind of a challenge that creates a tipping point from which, we can choose different crossroads on which humanity wants to traverse. And I believe that is the greatest opportunity we have with us. You asked about the challenges for law. Well, look, there are many, but I want to kind of shift the perspective slightly. When I view the world at this point, what I see is these sifting sands. These sands of time are shifting so quickly. There is very little anchoring. So people don't know what they can hold on to in terms of what is right or wrong. Yasmin mentioned the word moral. Um, a lot of people hesitate to use the word moral. My own understanding or definition of moral is anything that is humane, that is compassionate, that is positive. And I think we have to bring those things at the heart of whatever it is we decide to do as a civilization. Coming specifically to the question about law, I think the greatest opportunity that the legal fraternity and the communities, and particularly spaces like A4ID and so many of the other wonderful pro bono spaces have, is I think you are going to be the anchor in these sands of sifting, time where everything is moving around. It will be this legal fraternity which has a deeper understanding of constitutional law, why these constitutions had to be created the way they are, what they uphold. Constitutions were not written just for the good times, they were actually written for times of crisis like these. And so I think the entire awareness building, education, reaching out to the grassroots communities, networks through various partners, including civil society and others, governmental, quasi-governmental organizations, all of this is going to be critical. So I think the last line I will say on this is the next decade is going to be unlike anything our generation has seen. And what we need to create from here is an urgent appeal for a positive movement of people who want to uphold everything that is decent about humanity. So I will stop with that.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, for those comments. I really like your framing of sifting sands. It gives you really the sort of feel of what's happening in many of the places that we work in. In fact, and I agree with you, and I am a strong believer that crisis presents an opportunity and to sort of rethink and reimagine. All that we need is guidance, guided by hope. So I want to zone in now from the broader to the focused, and we have an expert with us who is focused in India and in the criminal justice system in India, Ms. C.P. Shruthi. She is a senior associate mitigation at the Square Circle Clinic, Nalsa University of Law, Hyderabad. Her work is focused on conducting extensive field work to collect, analyze, and present the life circumstances of prisoners sentenced to death as part of sentencing submissions before courts. Now, Shruthi has prepared mitigation reports in a variety of cases, including murder, sexual offenses, and terror offenses. Shruthi, great to have you here. I want to focus your attention to the criminal justice system and what you're familiar with, which is the Indian criminal justice system. So what are the critical access to justice issues India is currently facing, particularly in the context of the criminal justice system?
Thank you, Govind. And thank you, everyone, for having me here. Thank you, A4ID, for having me here. When I was thinking about legal landscape and, how can the legal landscape in India contribute to sustainable development goals, I was thinking about what do we really mean when we say access to justice. We don't mean just the ability to be able to walk into a courtroom or the police station. Not just that, right? But it's about whether people, regardless of poverty, social location, vulnerability, are able to meaningfully use the legal system to protect their rights and to secure fair outcomes. So that would mean having timely legal representation, being heard at every stage of the process, being able to secure bail, and ensuring that the evidence and sentencing decisions are fair and proportionate. So it's about all of these things, but what our data shows us is that at every stage there are problems, there are challenges, starting from when somebody wants to register a first information report or an FIR. Usually these are mechanically registered. Then the investigation that follows are usually quite weak. There is also a very long pre-trial incarceration period in India, which is not just a procedural issue, but also an access to justice issue, because prolonged detention without trial will disrupt your family ties, deepen poverty for a lot of these families, and of course also undermines the presumption of innocence. And once these trial starts, these problems only get exasperated. And our study shows that a very high percentage of the prison population in India under trial, which is around about 77%. And these prisoners, many of these under trial prisoners, come from impoverished and marginalized backgrounds. Over 85% earn less than 10,000 rupees a month, and more than 90% are unemployed. And of course, this economic vulnerability will shape your bail outcomes as well. Our work has shown us that either a lot of people are not able to apply for bail because they don't know that is an option. You'd have a lawyer, a legal aid lawyer who's probably never met you, who's never spoken to you about your case. Even if you happen to secure a bail, a lot of them are unable to comply with bail conditions like giving a surety, even if it's a very small amount. So as a result of all of this, what happens is that you have overcrowded prison, lack of hygienic conditions in prison. Then in prison, of course, there are not enough doctors, psychiatrists, or other facilities that prison actually needs. And we have seen this playing out in our own cases, where at the Supreme Court in several death penalty cases, because of shoddy investigation, unreliable recoveries, lack of any evidentiary basis for conviction, it leads to acquittal after years of not only being wrongfully incarcerated, but being on death row. And together, these patterns show us how denial of bail, poor early stage safeguards and weak investigations, all of this systematically undermine access to justice. And in some cases, if you happen to have decent legal representation, only at the appellate stage, it seems like appellate correction is kind of like the only remedy that's available to you after long after your rights have been violated. Yeah.
Thank you, Shruthi, for that. Quick but very powerful. It's very sobering statistics that we have. And it also neatly ties up to one of the issues that Vish pointed out in the beginning, that inequality sort of exacerbates and undergirds these conditions for prisoners and folks under trial. 77% of persons incarcerated are under trial. That's a shocking number from India right there. So now the next focus I want to do is on our neighbor, India's neighbor, Bangladesh. We have Mr. Umer Aiman Khan joining us, although not necessarily from Bangladesh. I'm told he's across time zones. So Umer Aiman Khan is an associate at the Legal Circle, a full-service law firm in Dhaka in Bangladesh. He's also a member of Think Legal Bangladesh, which is a legal non-profit. Umer, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. I don't know what time it must be where you are.
I'm back in Bangladesh.
Oh, you're back. All right, great. So
yeah,
then
I'm back.
My sympathies
back
have reduced a little bit. So now, Umer, I want to sort of pick your brain on something that's we're very familiar for South Asians, which is the tool of public interest litigation. Now, public interest litigations, or PILs, has long been a tool for social transformation in South Asia, even some parts of Africa, some jurisdictions there. And how has PIL evolved recently in Bangladesh? And could you maybe talk about it as a tool and an opportunity for driving legal and social change in Bangladesh?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Firstly, thank you everyone. Thank you for A4ID for this opportunity to be representing as a neighbor Bangladesh in this webinar. I think for PIL, public interest litigations in a broader perspective have been instrumental to SDGs. But from a South Asia perspective, public interest litigation has been a tool for social change and transformation in South Asia. In context of Bangladesh, its evolution reflects a growing ambition to hold institutions accountable, expand rights, and push for systemic reforms. The right to bring a PIL is a constitutional right in Bangladesh and stems from Article 102 of the Constitution. The primary test of locus standi is the person aggrieved test, meaning a person aggrieved by actions or inactions of any person or organization performing functions of the Republic. However, in the 1990s, a case in the appellate division of Mohiuddin Farooq versus Bangladesh, where the court allowed environmental NGOs to challenge harmful development projects on behalf of affected communities. In this case, the precedents have lowered the bar of the person aggrieved tests, and courts allow PIL to be brought before them by entities not directly aggrieved. Since Mohiuddin Farooq, the landscape has shifted drastically. First, courts have been more welcoming towards the variety of PIL. We have PILs being filed in relation to river pollution, seeking judicial inquiry for violence against marginalized groups, framing legal protection for Good Samaritans in Bangladesh. Secondly, courts are now more willing to go beyond symbolic declarations. They issue structural orders and ask government bodies to report back. Recently, our chamber's managing partner, Barrister Anita Ghazi Rahman, filed a petition after a girl in Dhaka died after falling in a manhole. The petition sought a report back from the concerned authorities as to why manholes across Bangladesh will not be properly sealed and covered. Although PILs are a good instrument for social change, they have their limitations, primarily the implementation end of things. When a good order comes through, for example, in the case of the Good Samaritan, the courts directed the government to frame laws in relation to it. However, we are yet to see proper implementation in the process. Although courts have reportedly asked governments to report back, but there are still issues of implementation. Secondly, in terms of court's oversight, while the court as a body has passed these orders, but you would see in complex matters, in complex situations, the courts does not have the necessary expertise or the necessary workforce to follow through in terms of particular. For example, in a case that we have worked from the chambers where in the river delta, they were removing illegal settlements, but we were in favor of a certain group of people who were settled there before any of those settlements were declared to be illegal. But when we were trying to convince the court to pass orders so that they are relocated before being destroyed, the courts didn't have the proper equipment or the proper necessary enforcement abilities to ensure a proper execution of the removal of illegal establishments in the process. Thirdly, good PILs are being taken a step back because although the boundary of the person aggrieved test in Bangladesh has been lowered, that has allowed a lot of misuse in terms of PILs being filed, ranging from when high school examinations are to be held. We have seen absurd PILs in Bangladesh in relation to moon sightings on when the Eid is to be declared in Bangladesh. We have had PILs regarding that in Bangladesh. So PIL has its challenges, but it has been good. Despite all the challenges, it has pushed for reforms where democratic organs have failed, where the parliament, where other government bodies have failed to ensure some form of rights of citizens. PILs have, and our courts have definitely stepped in. It has addressed social issues and has worked as a check and balance mechanism for the executive always. That's it.
Thanks, Umer, for your comments. When you mentioned about the good PIL and the bad PIL, it resonated a lot with, I'm sure, with Vish as well, who are lawyers who practice in India as well. But you're right. I mean, it's the legacy of that instrument in terms of achieving social change is undeniable. Matter of expertise of judges is an issue not only for PIs but even for other matters. But there is a strong tool there for social change, some of which we've achieved too. So thank you, Umar, for that. So look into the situation in Bangladesh. But now I think we have a sense of the broad lay of the land as far as the challenges and opportunities are concerned. Now, I guess going back to what Vish said, the challenges are massive. So are the opportunities. But I guess the solutions are probably going to come from coming together. So that brings me to the next theme that I want to explore, which is on partnerships and collaborations. Let me start with Vish again. Vish, based on your experience, what do you consider essential elements of a successful partnership? Now, do give us some examples of partnerships in our sector that have driven, social change.
Thanks very much, Govind. And I think I have to reiterate many of the things that have already been said in terms of the partnerships, in terms of trust, etc. But just very quickly, how A4ID works is that we get the demands from the development sector, and then we link them to the lawyers who are willing to take those things or those requests pro bono, and then they are able to deliver on those particular legal questions that there are. In terms of the principles of successful partnerships, we've realized that a few things are absolutely essential, and we really do take care that those are met. I think the first one, as you and Yasmin both have emphasized, is the importance of trust and of shared goals. It's very important that between partners there is that open conversation, there is that transparency, there is that expectation management, and there is that trust that you can repose in each other so that the results are achieved to the best possible outcomes. The second is that the partnerships have to be dynamic, and we've noticed that we continue checking in with our partners and making sure that the partnership that we have is one that is dynamic. So it serves the purpose that it was set out for, but also to make sure that we are able to deliver on what the current status of that partnership is. As we've spoken about the challenges, there are many, and one of them being a very rapidly changing world. So it's important that the partnerships are completely and truly dynamic. The third partnership model that we really encourage and we found to be very useful is to make sure that there is a lot of local stakeholders who are part of this partnership. We do want to work with the grassroots organizations. We do want to work with local players and then link them to global lawyers, so that delicate balance of local and global and national and international. I think this is very, very important that we maintain it at all times. And the partnership shouldn't take away from the local importance of the issues that we are dealing with. The fourth principle that we really work on is the expertise that we deploy. So we make sure that the expertise of the lawyers as well as the others is up to, not just up to the mark, but also completely relevant to what is being done. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, that the impact of these partnerships should be long. It should be sustainable. It's something that is not a short win. It's not just technical expertise. It's not just numbers that we're looking at, but the impact measurement has to be really, really strong and stellar. Now, in terms of looking at some of the partnerships that we've been part of course, I will only be able to share maybe one or two case studies, and I won't go into the details of how this was brokered, but we've really had a wide range of partnerships that we've been party to. For instance, opening free schools in Kenya, all the way to setting up a tribunal for environment in Ethiopia. In India, we worked with partners who needed legal advice to be able to establish themselves and to be able to provide homes which were displaced because of natural disasters. And these all were possible because of the above principles that we said, and really coming together and putting our heads together and looking at cross-border partnerships. So those are some of the principles and some of the case studies or examples that I can give you. Of course, we have a lot more, and I would urge everybody to explore the website to see them.
Could you maybe have someone share on the chat for our attendees? But I think great notes, which these are for not only our sector but translatable to all partnerships. But even particularly, especially on engagement with local needs, sometimes I think one complaint for our sector is that decisions tend to be top down and not bottoms up, and I think that's a very crucial principle. I want to turn it over to Lakshmi, and Lakshmi, I wanted to ask you, could you share your experience? You've been working with A4ID for many years. You've also been here. Could you share your experience working with not only A4ID, but pro bono organizations like A4ID at the time of real-time crisis? And perhaps maybe you can, there's a quick story you can share with us that highlights the impact of these collaborations. Lakshmi, I think there might be some lag. I'm not sure if it's only for me. There's some lag.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say that, we pretty much hit the ground running in terms of our relationship with A4ID, because just as we had started our work, with the Women in Value Chains network that I had set up. This was in 2019, and in 2020 the COVID crisis hit, and we were focusing, our global value chains work was focused on the apparel and textile industry workers, as well as those in the agro sector. And if we look at, I'm just focusing on India at this point, we began to see mass migrations of hundreds and thousands of workers who did not know how to make the trip back home, whether they would have a job in the future, how to deal with a health crisis at this scale, and so on. And it was really a team from A4ID which supported the Women in Value Chain, set up a kind of a free counseling, legal help center where there were actual cases where workers got stuck and they did not know how to move ahead. Even with the government machinery, we received help from their team. And for me, that was the greatest validation, because those of us who are not an active part of the legal fraternity and community, you don't usually go to lawyers unless there's a crisis. So this was just beautiful that, the way they turned up and they helped us and on the ground. So those relationships stay and have grown stronger. And then, Vish comes along, and then he becomes a part of the Women in Value Chains network. A4ID is a part of it. And what that has resulted in is, when there are changes in the labor laws, there are interpretation, there are workshops we take with civil society organizations who have questions on what does this mean, if the labor law is this, that, and the other. So there's a lot of guidance. There is, legal aid help given as required, and connecting people to the legal networks in whichever state it's required. So for a country of this size with, so many issues, this ability to move quickly and move in a very personal way to make sure that people get the help they need, I think that has been great. And so I'm a big advocate of pro bono legal aid and this whole fraternity because of our own experience with A4ID. So thank you. Just wanted to put that out.
Thank you, Lakshmi. I think also one thing you mentioned there is, of course, that pro bono work also must be of stellar quality. So when we call on folks to assist, just because it's pro bono doesn't mean that you marshal. No, you don't marshal all skills and resources you have. And I'm very glad to hear that story of how it was helpful during the time. of crisis. I want to turn it over to Umer because Umer, I think there is another partner you sort of dabble with, which is technology. And I want to sort of hear more about it. Yeah, technology, of course, is taking over. It's shaping legal services all across the world. Could you share with us a few maybe promising examples from Bangladesh where tech has expanded access to justice, maybe for underserved, marginalized communities?
Right. Thank you again, Govind, for giving me the floor. So if you look at access to justice, it's not just a statement. It's a demand that in turn helps create trust in all other institutions. So technology, if you look at technology from the perspective of allowing access to justice and furthering, ensuring proper access to justice, as you said, pro bono work isn't and shouldn't be just menial work, and you should come in all hands on deck and not just do it for. So just to refer to that point, if you use technology or with the emerging AI world properly, I think lawyer hours, even in pro bono or in proper commercial work, can be used for this. Can be used more with quality for more better. You can use less hours for better work. For example, you can delegate your tasks. You can delegate all the menial tasks to the AI, and you can just deal with the proper reasoning portions and where things will actually make a lot of difference. That being said, technology, you have to look at like a double-edged sword. Technology isn't some magic cure-all or a dangerous threat that we must blindly accept or reject. Instead, it must be accepted with a lot of care and thought. We must thread very carefully. It has a lot of with AIs. We have previously seen breaches in a lot of information. People have used ChatGPTs to draft petitions, use sensitive documents, and that sort of have been leaked previously. And but at the end of the day, we must embrace it properly. We can't deny. We can't just leave out of it. But coming back to the perspective of Bangladesh, there is a lot of potential, and I think some of the statistics that I'm about to share about Bangladesh might be some can be relatable to India as well. In Bangladesh, we have 86 million mobile phone users and 78 million people have also access to the internet. So Bangladesh has a great potential to use tech to ensure better access to justice. In August 2025, UNDP, the European Union, and our National Legal Aid Services Organization signed a deal in an effort to digitize legal aid services in Bangladesh, primarily by way of mobile applications, online case tracking processes, and virtual mediation processes, etc. Furthermore, our National Legal Aid also operates a toll-free helpline that provides free legal aid services. The most interesting thing that we have is our National Consumer Rights Protection Directorate. They have an online portal and a call center, and they have been extremely effective in dealing with consumer rights protections. Our Ministry of Women and Children Affairs operates its own task force and a call center, toll-free call center to address complaints of violations. Further, from a government's perspective, our Access to Information Bureau in Bangladesh have created an inheritance app, under the Muslim law in Bangladesh, calculating the inheritance that after a person have passed away is a complex process. They have taken the biggest challenge and sort of boiled it down to app so that people can just log in, put in their information, and that it will calculate with proper legal reasoning as to who gets what portions. And I think this in terms of access to justice or access to information, this is a big step. Although this app needs a lot more appreciation that it gets in Bangladesh, but I think this is a big step in terms of allowing everyone access to more so about information than to justice, so that they know what they're getting into. Although like India, all of our court cases are not properly broadcasted or not like that, but our Supreme Court has also been stepping up its efforts. We have been using all the international crime, after the July Revolution, there is International Crime Tribunal cases that are going on against the past regime. All that is being properly broadcasted every day on social media, on television, so it ensures transparency. We have now online case tracking, and bail confirmation processes have been digitized in Bangladesh, which reduces prisoners' release time, which has significantly cut down prisoners' release time in Bangladesh. At Think Legal Bangladesh, we are in process of building the country's first open source legal database that will allow users to contribute their information so that it becomes accessible by others. With the generation of AI that's coming on board, I think we should be more vigilant towards allowing tech in the legal system. We should allow tech to help us and not break our reasoning, and we should be we should just embrace it, but at the same time be very, very careful on how we are taking that into account. Thank you.
Thanks, Umer. I think a great set of reforms happening in Bangladesh, and particularly something complex as inheritance under Islamic succession law. If that can be brought down to an app, and of course with caveats, but at least it's a great step forward, and I think everybody is cautious of using all these technologies in the administration of justice. Now, I want to quickly bring in Shruthi also to hear about square circle clinics litigation work, but from another aspect of it. Shruthi, you had mentioned in your first intervention that there was some data that's revealed to you about the gaps, accuracy gaps, and accountability gaps in the system. And could you speak a little bit more about that, and how this process has helped you partner with, and what kind of partnerships do you make to make policy interventions on behalf of the clinic to address these gaps?
Yeah, thanks, Govind, for that. So I'm going to mainly just quickly speak about three main interventions, because two of these were actually where we've partnered with A4ID, in working towards building programs and curriculums. One of our main areas of intervention is forensics. We've seen through our forensic work how courts and the legislature increasingly demand scientific evidence, but without any standards of admissibility or quality. So this means that a lot of unreliable evidence and even junk science is admitted. And one of the main most glaring examples of this is bite mark being admitted as a solid DNA evidence in a lot of cases, and people are convicted just purely on the basis of that. And even where there is robust DNA evidence, different kinds of DNA evidence, questions about, how is it collected, the chain of custody, how is it stored, the methodology, all of this remains unexamined. And even the expert reports are treated as conclusive facts rather than expert opinions during interrogations. There is a failure to insist on, cross-examining the expert or providing the underlying documents for their expert opinions. And we have been, and we have worked with A4ID in putting together a workshop for lawyers and legal experts and taking them through basics of DNA science. What are the things that one should look for in terms of asking for underlying documents. And in fact, we've been able to get 6 of our death sentence cases remanded back for a retrial only on the basis of unreliable forensic evidence, and some of them have eventually led to an acquittal as well. So that's one area. I'll just quickly speak about the other one. The other one is mitigation and sentencing. And mitigation team is a team that conducts very detailed interviews with prisoners on death row, their family, and then we put these reports to the court. In 2022, in one of our cases, after our intervention, the court laid down a detailed procedure for collection of this material. So since then, a social worker or a psychologist or a sociologist is appointed by the court to go and conduct detailed qualitative interviews and bring in information about their life to the court. And recently, just about 2-3 weeks ago, in one of our other cases, the Supreme Court has affirmed that the right to present these factors or mitigating circumstances or mitigating evidence, it's not just procedural, but part of the constitutional right of a fair trial. So this is a massive shift where the court is looking to institutionalize this, not just something that is a procedure, but to say that if this process of collection of information and presentation hasn't happened, that has to say that it can be said that they've not had a fair trial from a sentencing perspective. So we've worked with A4ID last year to put together a workshop to train people to do mitigation investigations in death penalty cases. So I think to answer your question on what makes for a good partnership, or how do we partner with people to bring about policy changes, I think one of the main areas is to recognize what the gaps are in the system, and then look for partners whose vision aligns with yours and work towards building that gap. So
Thanks, Shruthi. I mean, I'm very happy to hear about the success of the clinic. We had a chance to work with your precursor back in the day, and I think it would be very useful to read more about the work of the Square Circle Clinic. So I would encourage you to share some link on the chat for our attendees. Now, I wanted to get into one more theme. So now we are kind of reaching the close of time, but I want to address this because this is a very important theme. But I request all my panelists here to treat this as some form of a rapid fire. So we can just, maybe a single line or 2-line interventions in terms of a closing. So what I want to do is look ahead. What are we doing looking forward? We have the problems. We have some experiences. So let me start with Lakshmi here. Lakshmi, could you tell us, maybe very, very quickly, how can the legal fraternity, through pro bono services, continue to support a constituency you're very familiar with, vulnerable workforces, and amplify grassroots voices in the global south? A quick, short intervention.
Three points to that. First is, I think we've got to upscale the pro bono community. What I mean by that is we need to rope in retired legal experts, judges, etc., etc. We need to bring in academicians who are involved in teaching law to students so that we can rope in the students, get them to be comfortable with pro bono. We need to, of course, continue to bring in the practitioners. And then we have to get this fraternity to really build the capacity of local networks on the ground where vulnerable worker communities are. In a country with the kind of population we have, or even Bangladesh for that matter, with the kind of population density we have, nothing else is going to work with the kind of change that's going to come, climatic and geopolitics. So I think we have to really scale it to the next level. The second point is we need to bring the media in, and we have to get more case studies, stories, conversations, dialogues, op-eds about pro bono in various forms of media using AI and technology. We don't need to rope in writers. Now, this is where, Umer and others can actually help us to generate the kind of content we want to populate the virtual world with. I think this is a great positive use of technology. And if we don't do it now, it's going to be too late. So that's that. And the third is, once a community is there, we've got to look at creating active spaces for grassroots voices to actually share what their needs are, what their requirements are, and where they need support. So I think it's these three things that I'll leave you with.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for that quick but very powerful intervention. I'm going to ask everyone to take cue. So I'm going to jump right into Shruthi. Shruthi, as far as the Indian criminal justice system is concerned, what are the top three systemic reforms or institutional interventions that you would think would align with SDGs vision of access to justice?
Yeah, I think we need systemic reforms at multiple levels. So first is the pre-trial stage. Bail must become the norm, and with structural support to ensure that poverty does not keep people inside the bars, keep people incarcerated. We need to build support system to ensure compliance with bail conditions, and access to effective legal aid needs urgent strengthening. Second is we need institutional safeguards in forensics and policing. There have to be enforceable standards for admissibility of forensic evidence. There has to be accreditation of laboratories, guaranteed access to underlying documents, and expert cross-examination in each case, so that we don't have junk science entering the court. And third would be, and one of the areas that we are actually looking to work on is cases of wrongful convictions. And third would be mental health and vulnerability assessments. It must be integrated into trial and sentencing stage, and social workers must necessarily be imagined as part of the criminal justice system, as necessary part of legal defense. Right now, there's absolutely no access that someone who's not a lawyer would have to jails, but we know how necessary it is for people with the right kind of training to be able to, help in, information collection, and even, putting together reports like this. Yeah, so those would be, my very quick three absolute systemic reforms that are required. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry for rushing everybody, but thanks so much for that. And then we'll get to the lawyer on the panel also here. Umer, I want to ask you. You mentioned the regime change in Bangladesh 2020, but just keep that aside. Generally, the lawyers have a great role in protecting right during political crisis too. So could you reflect on that? And going forward in constantly shifting geopolitical scenarios, how do you see lawyers' roles and responsibilities going forward? No 2-3 points, but generally also you can reflect. I don't want you to do 1, 2, 3 again if you want. Don't want to.
Right. Thank you. So I think if you look back at the history of Bangladesh since 1971 to 2024, we have seen multiple revolutions take place, multiple regime changes with military interventions, with interventions of the people. There have been multiple changes, and if you look at all of it, lawyers, just a point to be very proud of all of us as lawyers. You would see lawyers have been at the forefront of it all. So if you go back to 1971, Dr. Kamal Hussain have been, he's one of our statements now, one of our leading figures in Bangladesh, has been in the forefront, have been dealing with the Agartala conspiracy case that's very famous from the 1971 regime. To advocates like, I'll try to name a few in the 2024, what we call the monsoon revolution in Bangladesh. Advocates like Monzoor Al-Motin, who stepped up in the occasion when police started using lethal weapons on the protesters. He stepped up to file up again a PIL to the court seeking an order so that police is stopped from using guns. And I think one of the most moving statements that we have seen by Advocate Monzoor Al-Motin during is that we are not here for anyone's, in a press conference after the filing of the PL, that we are not here for anyone's personal agenda. We are actually here to save our children. Outside the High Court, I have seen lawyers clash with the police so that arbitrary arrests were not made during that time. But I think in every political crisis scenario, lawyers are the first people who's faced with that first question on shifting the moral compass. And I think I can vouch from Bangladesh's side that lawyers in Bangladesh have always been on the right side of the history. I have seen lawyers set up, I have seen legal pro bono groups on WhatsApp during the revolution where you just write and drafted. It's more cinematic. I have seen lawyers have ran to the court with papers in hand. A 17-year-old during the revolution during the mass uprising in July was handed a interrogation, a remand in Bangladesh, which is very unfair under the Children's Act. I have seen Dr. Shadin Malik, is a very good human rights advocate in Bangladesh, ran to the court with just a newspaper in hand, seeking an order to prevent that. So I think lawyers have stepped up, protected the constitution, protected the law, and protected its people in every political crisis that we have seen so far. And we have been on the right side of the history. I think, yes, during political crisis, lawyers do play a very vital role.
Yes, I mean, thank you, Umer, for mentioning. I'm very heartening to hear all the stories from Bangladesh. And also, I mean, it ties up very well with what Lakshmi was saying, that there's also an urgency of action required here. And in terms of shifting the moral compass, what is okay and what is not okay, even if it's a political crisis. I think lawyers have a big role. Thanks so much, Umer, on that quick comment. And finally, Vish, I think we made good time for this last round. So Vish, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. A very generous 2 minutes. What do you foresee as emerging crucial drivers of social change in South Asia?
Thanks very much. I'll try actually doing it in less than 2 minutes, but very quickly. So this comes from a lot of the conversations that we've had with our legal partners and our development partners. And we've identified a few things which we think are going to be the crucial drivers of social change. And I think the first one is the importance of pro bono. I think everybody on this panel has highlighted how important it is, especially in times of crisis, and especially in times, I think on the first day we heard about how funding cuts, etc., are going to have a negative impact. So I think we really need to push up pro bono, understand why it's important, and also acknowledge it that it's not just philanthropy. It's not just something that you do out of the goodness of your heart. There are cogent, very good reasons to be doing pro bono. So that's the first social driver of a social in terms of social challenges. I think the second is probably doesn't take a lot to see around us, and I think including in our part of the world and globally, is the rapid climate change and how important it is to act now. And there is no negotiability. There's no margin of appreciation. We have to act yesterday and we have to act decisively, which brings in the pro bono part as well, because 5 years to achieve SDGs 2030, we've got the final push. So it's extremely important that we work towards that. The third is also to see and to also measure the impact, because as a lot of us have said, I think it's very important that we go beyond what numbers say about impact. As Shruthi's said, Lakshmi, Umer, all of us have acknowledged that the importance of measuring impact and recording it is very good practice for sustained partnerships, for ensuring change, for tweaking our programs and our projects, for making sure that the stakeholders are well informed, and for a number of other reasons. So that has to be at the heart of what we do, to look and to identify impact beyond just statistics. And then finally, I think artificial intelligence, I'd be doing a great injustice if I don't mention that, because I think artificial intelligence is going to be, it is already the next big thing. I think at A4ID, what we are particularly looking at is, because artificial intelligence is only as good as the data that's fed in, as the algorithms that are fed in. So at A4ID, we are committed to ensuring that any artificial intelligence developments are not devoid of ethics, and we're looking at ethical AI as a development tool. We are working with partners, for instance, who've developed this tool where labor laws can be taken, and the artificial intelligence is massive scope in terms of scalability. So that's my less than 2 minutes, and these are the main drivers that I think. Back to you, Govind.
Thanks, Vish, and thanks everyone. I think we made good time. Just a little overboard, but maybe we have time for one question. There are many questions here, so I encourage all the panelists to have a look at the questions that have come. Some are directed specifically, but I think some of them are also answered already in terms of AI and use of technology. I think we have not only heard about tech from Umer, but we've heard everybody else's views in terms of how tech can be brought together. But I guess one broad question is, what is the role of law reform bodies in South Asia? Are they key players in encouraging change and collaborations? Now, I suppose these are civil society actors encouraging reform in a particular direction. Anybody want to take a crack at it, or should I cold call someone? Umer, would you want to take a crack at it? Or Vish, yeah, why don't you go?
So just very quickly, I'm happy to take. I think one of the things that we need to realize is that when we think of law, I think law has at least two functions. I'm not going into the prohibitive function, etc. So I'm going into the facilitative function and the control function. And I think when we look at the facilitative function, one of the things we don't realize is that even any organization that at the outset might not appear to be legal as such, we do need to acknowledge that you are dealing with law, regardless of whether you're legal or not. There will be compliance. There will be those audits that you'll have to fill. There'll be those legal health checks that you'll have to take. And that is where we come in, where we are ensuring that even whatever the standard of substantive help that you're providing is not necessarily only through lawyers, but I do think they have a part, and a very crucial one. And I think I go back to what you said in the beginning, Govind, and as well to what Yasmin said about the role that lawyers have in playing, and to making sure that that role is played to the best of our abilities, at least.
Thanks, Vish. So, I mean, we are very much out of time, but there is some interest on the app, Umer. So I would request you to just put a link where some of our queries can take a look at on the Islamic succession. Yeah. So people can, I think, maybe read up about it. I've learned a lot. I had some closing comments, but what I want to say is that this is a very important moment where we partner with folks who are working hard on the legal side as well as on the grassroots level. And these are the kind of collaborations that we're talking about. And we can take it outside this room and do a substantive work. So with this, thank you so much for all of you for sharing your expertise. And I want to turn over to Yasmin for some closing comments. Yasmin?
Thank you. So as we draw this session then to a close, I want to pause and reflect on what we've heard today. Firstly, I thank our remarkable panel for sharing their insights, their experience, and their vision. Your contributions have brought depth and clarity to our discussion. Many thanks also go to our moderator for skillfully guiding today's conversation, ensuring that we explored the issues from really every angle. And I'd like to thank all of you, our wonderful participants, for joining us from across South Asia and also beyond. So big thank you to them. Your engagement, your questions, and your commitment are what turn these discussions into very much meaningful action. Now, we set out to explore what it truly meant to bridge the gap between the law as it's written and the law as it's lived, between those who hold expertise and those who need its power most. In other words, the opportunities and challenges, which were the first question that was posed. And what has become clear is that bridging this gap requires more than just providing legal advice. It demands that we build trust, share knowledge, and strengthen institutions. It calls upon us to equip communities with the tools to demand accountability and to enable civil society to flourish. Today, we heard powerful examples of how this can be done through partnerships that amplify voices that was mentioned by Shruthi, through innovation that expands access to justice, as outlined by Vish, as described by Umer, specifically with regard to AI and technology, and through collaboration that transforms legal expertise into a catalyst for social change. And that was actually mentioned by all of you. South Asia, as we've explored, is a region of great complexity, but also extraordinary opportunity. The challenges of entrenched inequality, climate vulnerability, and social injustice are real, but they're met by traditions, and we have to remember this, of resilience, community action, and advocacy that can lead to transformative change when combined with strong legal frameworks and inclusive partnerships. If anything, today's conversation has reminded us that the law can be both a shield and a tool for transformation. It can protect, it can empower, and it can ignite changes that are long-lasting, that endure. And crucially, none of us, I think, and this was said by all, can work alone. Today, we've seen how much stronger we are when we bring together legal professionals, civil society leaders, and development practitioners. When we combine our knowledge, our networks, and our determination, we can build a bridge that's sturdy enough to carry communities towards justice, equity, and dignity. Because today is not an ending, it's a call to action. So I wholeheartedly agree with Lakshmi that there is a need for an urgent positive movement, and we will work together towards that. And as we've heard in our discussion today, bridging this gap continues in courtrooms, in classrooms, in boardrooms, and in communities across the entire region. It is the work that we must do, and we must do together in partnership. So as we close this final webinar of this year, can I ask you to please complete the survey? Otherwise, I will get hung if I don't mention this. Finally, I hope you leave with renewed energy, a sense of shared purpose, ready to continue building the partnerships that will unlock legal support for development, strengthen the rule of law, and deliver justice for all. Let us carry this momentum forward and keep building that bridge side by side together. So with that, I now bring this session to a close and this year's webinar series to a close. Thank you all.